Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm truly honored for a number of reasons. Not only to have the level of intellect, insight, the courage and the tenacity of so many of the people in our society, and in particular, on a monthly basis for Dr. Alexandra Borden to help us to facilitate our mental health matters. Join us this month, Dr. Mark Lockhart, together with Mr. Dwayne Warren, and we're going to be chatting about something that I think is very timely, very important for our health, well-being, and social welfare. The chemical imbalance, CBD oil, and medications in mental health. Now, you think that sounds like a lot? You wait till we share other information with you. So please, stay tuned for Talk Today.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email Talk Today at candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255. Courtesy of Flow,
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. I know Miss Susan is saying, geez, it's Monday and he can't be here yet. Well, it may be Monday for some of you, with great respect. I think my week starts on a Saturday. And I was honored, over the weekend to be able to spend a few minutes here looking at some of the things quietly. And I share that because I believe this discussion on a monthly basis relative to mental health is so, so important for our people to appreciate it. Some of us, maybe because it's still a new year, we're looking after our physical health. Maybe because we're expecting the birth of our first child or the graduation from some school of another child. And we're looking at financial preparations for continued studies or perhaps for retirement. Well, if we don't look after our mental health, how can we enjoy those things? So, Dr. Borden, thank you so much for helping us on a monthly basis put this together. And as we welcome Dr. Mark Lockhart and Mr. Dwayne Warren to this month's discussion, I want to share. I thought I had a perspective. I'm convinced that some of the things I'm right, but with the greatest respect, I still have even more questions. So perhaps Dr. Borden, start with you first.
Yeah.
This month's discussion.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having us on today. We spend a lot of time in the show looking at behavioral changes. As a psychologist, I do a lot of work with managing emotions through behaviors and changing the way that we think about things. But I also believe that medications play a large part in mental health as well. With my training in psychiatric medications, I have a special appreciation for it and definitely believe that there are benefits to looking at the medical side of things. And something that we often get questions about, me in office, but actually on our show here as well, has been the use of cannabis oil. And so I'm thrilled to be able to look at that today, the benefits of it, any potential risks that may come with it, as well as how it's available here in Cayman.
Well, I'm certainly hopeful that the people listening not only would ask questions today and continuing, but would be very attentive. I think all of us are our best advocates and champions for our own health. And sometimes, if it's you or someone that you love dearly is in need of something, you'll do anything almost to make sure that person is treated, has the best resource ever. And we make missteps at times. So, Dr. Lockhart, to you again. Welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, Sterling, and Dr. Borden. Thanks for having me, both of you. And to my good friend, Mr. Denny. And to the general public out there listening. Thanks for having me. As Dr. Borden said, I think this is a very pertinent and relevant topic. For many reasons, and I'm hoping that in our discussion today we can go over those. But the reality is that cannabis oil is legal in the Cayman Islands. The reality is that it is a medication. It has medicinal benefits. The reality is that it can still be abused. The reality is that our population, I'm sure, is split in terms of some people saying that it has benefits, others coming to other conclusions about its uses and potential benefits or lack thereof. So I think today I'm hoping that we can put a little bit of clarity and maybe, open up for some questions and dialogue regarding the use of cannabis oil.
And thank you. I think that's the reason why I'm so excited. I don't know that I always achieve the objective, but I try to prepare for it in a discussion. It doesn't matter if there's a fundraiser by a school and they have a fish fry. When is that? Why are you doing it? I try to prepare for everything. Mr. Daniel Warren, as we look at you, the individual, your involvement in our community, the social issues, whether they're political and nature, go back to the days of the referendum. There were very few people talking about the importance of a democracy and a referendum, whether it's going before the United Nations and making a presentation as a member of civil society, not elected, not appointed. We need those sort of champions in our society who are willing to sometimes insulate us from all of the barrage of attacks that we may get from all quarters. Somebody who thankfully has that physical muscular stature as you to shield us, but also the intellect to say, hey, why are you not looking at this thing? So thanks again for what it's worth.
Thanks. Well, I thank you for inviting me to the show, and good afternoon to the general public. I've had some really challenging times in the last couple of years, and one of the things that actually I thought about kind of after the fact was how fortunate I was, even though going through such a difficult situation, I was able to sit down in the midst of it with someone like Mr. Lockhart and have conversations that gave me context and helped me to see things in a perspective that I could handle the pressure of what was taking place. And you might think it's, not that important, but if you don't address the issues, they can really weigh heavy on you.
And that's the thing. I think we don't address the issues, whatever that thing is. Business, we'll see in the news, some financial entities hemorrhaging. A topic that you would relate to medicine.
Right.
But you don't realize that the loss that business is making is because of, until you address that issue. Now, I try not to make too many analogies at the business side of things, fear of people accusing me of knowing more than I do. But in science and in medicine and in mental health particularly, Dr. Warden, we've coined this particular discussion, the chemical imbalance, that use of CBD oil and medications in mental health. Could we start with looking at what is chemical imbalance, what medications, the physiological, biological? Give us a perspective so that we at least start to understand and maybe have a meaningful avenue which to discourse.
Yeah, so the term the chemical imbalance actually comes, I think, from a drug ad, and so which talks about a lot of times serotonin is depleted in persons who have depression and anxiety. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter. It's a chemical in the brain that helps us to balance our mood.
Okay.
And so the drug ads are very popular in the U.S. in particular, and one of them advocated for a chemical imbalance. And so while depression is lower in persons with anxiety and depression, they're not actually sure which comes first, right? Whether it's the anxiety and depression that comes first or if it's the chemical imbalance that comes first. But I have a lot of clients that come in and talk to me and they go, oh, it's just a chemical imbalance. I just need meds, which, is not my area. So I educate them on kind of this idea of the serotonin and the role it plays in mood and anxiety disorders. Medications are an option, and in some disorders, as we've talked before, medications are absolutely necessary. But for in other cases, they're an option and one that many people find helpful. I often tell people that medications tend to help more quickly. Therapy tends to offer longer-lasting benefits because it makes changes. But if a person is able to get medications to manage some of the more difficult symptoms initially, that can allow us to progress more quickly in therapy. So actually combined treatment is often what's been advocated for. But there are a lot of factors that come into play with whether we look at medications and or therapy or a combination of both.
I'm going to share something with you as hopefully, and if you've got my permission, you decide whether it's appropriate or not, you can counsel me whatever on air, right? I don't normally drink coffee. I usually don't consume caffeine knowingly. Today I did, deliberately so, because I look at caffeine as a drug. Now, I don't think it's an illegal drug. I don't think there's any law saying that you can't drink it until you're a certain age, right? And it's socially acceptable to drink it in the morning. So not only did I have 1 cup, I had 2. Not only was it not decaf, it was extra strong. I wanted to see what this thing would do. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not the first time I've done it, but I did it today to see what happens and how it would affect. In light of this idea of the biological interventions, does it make you agitated like some people? Does it make you calm? Well, it doesn't make you calm.
Well, unless if you have a caffeine dependence, in which case you will get jitters and headaches and feel really terrible if you've not had your caffeine, in which case that cup of coffee makes that go away.
Right. And my buddy, I know who I can go to. Hang on, let me give him 4 shots of this caffeine thing to bring him back to him. So that idea of biological, the idea of chemical, of medicinal things, we very respectfully, more than often, if someone came in here and poured us tea or coffee or some soda, some of us would drink it. No questions asked. Others would probably do it differently. I asked that in light of trying to prepare and looking at the stuff over the weekend. And the notion that, yes, we have this thing that was illegal, it's illegal in this form, not illegal anymore. Command has made changes. From the medicinal and from the medical perspective and legality, Dr. Lockhart, what are we talking about when we look at the use of cannabis and there's THC and there's all these words, and Dennis tries to give me a vocabulary lesson. Denny, hold on. I still on the first word.
Yeah.
All right.
So, I like to start with the fact that we as human beings are creatures that gravitate to using products to help treat and heal ourselves on different levels. So from the earliest recording history of man, we've found that humans have sought products, whether it be different types of barks of wood or trees or different types of plants, to use them to treat ourselves, whether we use them or used them topically, or we boiled them and we ingested them and we used them in different ways. That's been the history of us on this planet in every single culture. And again, from the beginning of time. Some of those products have been found to give certain types of reactions that may be euphoric or otherwise, and that has pushed certain members of within subsets of cultures to potentially abuse those substances. Let me underline again that every single culture on this planet, whether even if you find more of the more of the simpler cultures or less advanced cultures, they have medicine men, they use different types of products to heal, and some use them in excess to abuse. So that's the first thing. Does that necessarily mean that because a particular product was abused at one particular point in time or was viewed to have negative social impact or connotations at one particular point in time, that it could never be redeemed and found to have beneficial uses? And actually, the answer to that is no. And we can go back to things like the opium poppy, which was initially a substance of complete abuse. Over time, it was found that it had significant pain reduction and modulating effects. And hence, we have opiate medications that have been used. Now, again, there's a pendulum because we're seeing problems with that again. And this brings up the other point then. So if we use meds, if medications are part of who we are as the human animal, and they have certain benefits, they by themselves are not sufficient, but we find that we do need them for certain ailments. What we're then seeking is to find the safest possible options that we can use that create the greatest benefit and gain with the least amount of side effects or negative effects. That is what has brought us in trying to, again, just encapsulate everything to where we are in terms of using medical cannabis today. In that we do use medications, psychiatric medications for mental health issues. We have a lot of good medications that do work very well to treat many disorders. And on the same side, we have many medications that do cause side effects, that create weight gain, that can cause movement disorders, that can have negative effects on one's metabolism, that can lead to things like diabetes. And I can go on and beat up the meds. But so what we're always looking for is what are the safest alternatives that we can use to get a desired effect without negative effects. And it has brought us to where we're seeing cannabis has a role.
All right. I want to talk about that after. Now, I'm going to try my very, very best to pay attention to Miss Susan today. That was my goal for today. See if I can get there, but we'll see. It's on a Monday. When we come back from the break, can we talk about that and see, how it works and whichever. Also want to understand CBD oil, what it is and the like. Now, for those who are listening, it is our monthly Mental Health Matters, so please stay tuned for Talk Today.
Whether you're planning your child's next birthday party or simply looking for a social night out, look no further than Kingpin Bowling at King Sports Center.
With a range of packages and specials for bowling parties, socials, and corporate team building, Kingpin Bowling offers what no one else can. The only bowling alley in Cayman. And it's indoor fun, which means no mosquitoes, AC, and don't forget about their bowling bar. Book your bowling lanes today. Call 946-BOWL. That's 946-2495. Email kingpinbowling@candw.ky. For more information, visit their website, www.kingsportscenter.com.
King Sports Center, providing your fitness, recreation, and relaxation needs.
Hey, Cayman Massive, this is yours truly, Mikey Spice. I'm going to be in your town at the Mango Tree on Friday, February the 8th. Yes, 2019. You heard it right. On Friday, February 8th, 2019 at the Mango Tree. Don't miss it. It's going to be a good show. I am myself. That's the song you've been waiting for. Come out and see it. Live. I am myself.
At Seaboard Marine, customers often ask us questions about their shipments.
Hi, I'm thinking of buying a car from the States. Which port do you ship out of?
Hi, we ship out of Miami, Houston, and Brooklyn. Just let us know your port of choice and we can provide you with a quotation and answer any questions you may have on insuring and protecting your vehicle during its journey.
Shipping shore to shore, Seaboard.
Hello, I am Noel March, a small business owner in Georgetown for over 20 years. Small businesses depend on government to develop a quality infrastructure and environment that encourages entrepreneurs to create and grow local businesses, resulting in the creation of jobs and prosperity for Caymanians. Small businesses help drive our economy. Just as we have supported building the new airport, we must support the building of the new cargo and cruise port. It will give our tourism industry the opportunity to grow and Caymanian entrepreneurs the chance to shine. Support the port. Support our tourism.
Join Radio Cayman for C40 with Bob Kingsley.
Hi, this is Bob Kingsley, and this weekend on the countdown, the 40 hottest hits on the radio right here.
CT40.
This here's Saturday afternoon.
From 12:15 until 3:30.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you so much for joining us. And this month's Mental Health Matters, we're talking about the chemical imbalance, CBD oil, and medications in mental health. Dr. Alexandra Borden, together with Dr. Mark Lockhart and Mr. Dana Warren, are our guests. As we go through, as we educate and inform, as we have this continuing dialogue, hopefully people will get appreciative of why we're doing something and hopefully what the benefits are. Well, I have a lot of questions. And Mr. Warren, Dr. Warden, Dr. Lockhart, help us to get a perspective. Who jumps in next with me?
Let me, from a legal perspective, try to put cannabis into context.
Okay.
Because sometimes when people talk about cannabis, they think that it's this substance that Earth shouldn't even come near to. And the truth of the matter is that from a legal perspective, cannabis, along with a whole host of other lawfully prescribed medications, are listed in the misuse of drugs law. So when we think of misuse of drugs law, we think about the courtroom and somebody going to prison because of the misuse of drugs, right? And so the misuse of drugs law is the one that sets the control on how substances are used or not used. And so cannabis is just one of the drugs listed in that law. And so you'd have morphine. I'm sure people have gone to the hospital and have had to have morphine. That's another controlled drug that is on the same list as cannabis
that's Schedule A?
Yeah.
No,
it's Section 3 of the Misuse of Drugs Law.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what it says is that you can't use any of those drugs unless you've been authorized. Mm-hmm. And the ways you can be authorized is if you're a doctor, if you're a police officer, or you're someone controlling the pharmacy, or you're a patient or something along that line, right? And so people shouldn't think of cannabis as this, stepchild, because really and truly, all of the powerful medications that are used by the hospitals, they're all in the same boat, right? They're very powerful. Some can do great harm if misused, but used properly, as we know that doctors do on a daily basis, administer those drugs for the benefit of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to say that, for those who think that, we shouldn't even be talking about this subject, because I've come across a few people who feel that way. The benefits of, the benefits of having this conversation, hopefully, is to get people to appreciate what exactly it is we're talking about. And today we wanted to focus on the CBD, which is just one component of cannabis. And what CBD is, it's an activated form of a compound that is found naturally in the plant. So when the plant is growing and it's not cut down and it's not being aged, what's in the plant is called CBDA, which is basically a precursor acid that only gets activated once you apply heat. And so applying heat to CBD does not convert it to a compound that will make you high, right? There's another compound that does that. So this particular one that we're focusing on, sometimes when we think about it, because of how we think about drugs, we tend to think about them as being isolated. And that's not actually where you get the most benefit from CBD. And in some people argue that CBDA in itself is just as beneficial as CBD. And CBDA is what you would get if you were to, say, take the plant and just eat it raw, like, lettuce, the leaves, the flower, just eat it raw, right? There's no, even if you were to have a plant that had the potential of producing extremely high THC, but you didn't apply heat to it and you ate it, you wouldn't get high because it's not decarboxylated.
Because of the heat.
Because of the heat,
okay.
Right? And so what we're talking about is just one small section of it. However, most of the benefits come from a synergy of many of the compounds found in the plant, not just CBD alone. And one of the ways that CBD works is it binds to, I think it's what's called an allosteric receptor, which is not the CB1 receptor, but another one. And it actually interferes with how other receptors, how the other molecules are able to bind to the other receptors. And so it has this ability to, orchestrate what's going on.
So I like talking, and I want to bring both Dr. Lockhart and Dr. Borden in today. But we do have a caller online, and I usually put on my headset to keep my hair in place, but it's a different day. Let's go to our phones. Dr. Lockhart, Dr. Borden, and Mr. Denny Warren are our guests. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. You're on Talk Today.
Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon, panel.
Hey, good afternoon. How are you?
Yeah, good, man. Good. Sorry, this is gas, right? But this is my input now, right?
Yes, sir.
This is my opinion now, right? This is an adherent topic, There's a lot of taboo and stigma towards it now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how you see any prescription, even vitamins, right? They put a strain on your liver. So you got to drink a lot of fluids with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all the medication, right? Prescription, the side effects can be heart-related too, heart-related. And how you see the benefits of the marijuana, right? The benefits of the use of it, the extracts of it, right? The ailments, like for instance, epilepsy, right? Glaucoma, like fit seizures, right? Right? And by you smoke it now, right? That can alleviate chronic pain, right? Arthritis, and increase appetite. That's smoking now, not different factor, right? And the whole epitome of it, right? In a history of it, there was a lot of discrimination of it, right? In the Great Depression in the US now, a lot of racial attention towards it now. And they realize how they turn the coin now, it'll benefit now, right? And that's the get-go of it. And that's my opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it came out now, we have tendency, we say everything under the carpet. Like, look at those hard narcotics, cocaine, Novocaine, morphine, right, opium. They call narcotics now. They're actually lethal now. Marijuana kill it now.
Mm-hmm.
But those narcotics lethal. You see what I'm saying? And look at the regulated tobacco now, right? Emphysema, heart-related, other side effects of it. So how the legislators one day, right, legalize it to the fullest. And I know people came out, right, in all parts of the world, if they can't get their draw, they have a bad hair day and they take out the anger and frustration on people, right? So it's a coping mechanism, right? Mm-hmm. That's in a recreational use now. But like I said again, the factors towards it, beneficial use, other factors, the whole epitome of it. So I say, that's my input now for the day.
All right. Well, thank you very much, man. And I appreciate it. And this is where I think, on one hand, this discussion hopefully will get policymaker as well as, practitioner, legal as well as medical, the wider community, starting to talk about what we can do for our health and well-being. Dr. Lockhart, as a psychiatrist, everybody not only respects you as the individual, but your profession and understanding. We're trying to make sure that people are healthy, body, mind, and soul.
Correct.
So help us now.
So lots of interesting points were brought up. As the caller was saying, and as Mr. Warren was also saying about understanding cannabis and this fear that we have that if we speak about it and we discuss it, we're somehow advocating for or encouraging the abuse or the use among youth. And that's not what we're doing. And actually, the current system as it stands, and we have lots of evidence to show that. And when we say the current system of keeping cannabis completely illegal and keeping it underground and this so-called war on drugs has failed.
Mm-hmm.
And it is failing. And it is actually increasing the risk of our young people being sold cannabis that has formaldehyde on it, or it's sprayed with rat poison. And these are things that I've seen. We see it in the emergency room, and we've seen young people come in and admitted with severe bronchial spasms and other serious reactions because they've been sold these products that are substandard and dangerous. The CBD does not cause any euphoria. CBD, as Mr. Denny said, which is one aspect. It's actually one of about 500 different chemicals found in the cannabis plant. About 100 of those products being cannabinoids, which are uniquely associated with the cannabis plant. Another 400 or so chemicals that have potential beneficial effects that we're just now tapping into. What happens is that our current system of making it just completely illegal limits the ability for those of us in the medical field, those of us with interest, to be able to do research, to be able to investigate properly, to be able to do randomized controlled studies on the benefits of these. We were just talking during the break about some interesting facts that we're seeing coming clear, in that there are aspects now of cannabis, primarily the CBD, that actually can treat things like psychosis. Not only treat and reduce psychotic symptoms even better than some antipsychotic meds, but can actually reverse a bad reaction to high THC levels. But we don't have that product available because the law limits that. So if laws are changed and things are decriminalized and scheduled and monitored in a proper way, we'd be able to have access to be able to use the beneficial aspects of cannabis to treat. Not only that, just for the last thing, is that we're even seeing that the actual component too that does cause the euphoria, the THC, also has medicinal benefits. And we're seeing that with severe pain and in certain other conditions, multiple sclerosis and others, that the THC in certain levels is also beneficial. Last thing, and I'll let others in the panel speak, is that we have to be careful about gauging what is good or bad about cannabis based on the illegal market which exists.
Okay. Well, one of the things I want to ask of us, and hopefully, primarily because of today's show, I might ask the different people, people that I know well, people that were just, I'm not quite sure I know you, but doing this show, so I'll ask them questions. And I want to get into the notion of people's perception of it, then you alluded to it, and then smoking it, whether that's, and to legalize it for medicinal, do we also need to do it for the recreational, and those sort of questions. All right, going to pause, take a break. Next one will be for our headline news, and then after that, we're going to talk forever. No, stay tuned for Talk Today.
At Flow, we know that 4 are better than 1. Introducing Flow Quad Play. Packed with the fastest, most reliable broadband, the power and control of Flow Evo TV, Cayman's best mobile experience, and tons of home phone minutes, all in one convenient package from only $199 a month. With 4 plans to choose from, you're sure to find one that fits your needs. It's value, ease, and convenience all on one bill with Cayman's #1 network. Find out why 4 are better than 1 with Flow Quad Play at discoverflow.ky. Terms and conditions apply.
CUC advises customers on Watercourse Road in West Bay that they will experience interruptions to their electrical service on Wednesday, February 6th between 9:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. Areas affected include all customers on Watercourse Road between the junction of Hell Road and the junction of Boatswain Bay Road, including Nettie Rivers Lane, Bowman Close, Hillendale Close, Cadbury Link, Windstart Drive, Bristol Close, Fruitland Way, Ruby Lane, Alexandra Close, and Knowles Close. Motorists are asked to drive with caution when utilizing utilizing Watercourse Road, as CUC will have a number of vehicles and personnel in the area and will be required to temporarily block one lane on several sections of Watercourse Road. CUC apologizes for this interruption, which is necessary to facilitate required overhead infrastructure upgrades to provide customers with safe, reliable, and efficient power. In summary, Watercourse Road and surrounding areas will experience interruptions to their electrical service on Wednesday, February 6th between 9:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. For more information on the outage and streets affected, please contact CUC's customer service team at 949-5200 or email service@cuc.ky.
Did you know that recycling collection containers are located island-wide on Grand Cayman? The Department of Environmental Health's program is an integral part of DEH's waste management responsibility in the Cayman Islands. Start your recycling program at home today. Put your type 1 and 2 plastics in appropriate DEH recycling containers at all Foster's supermarkets, Kirk Market, or Harless Grand Harbor. Please keep the Cayman Islands clean. Reduce, reuse, and recycle. For more information about recycling, go to www.deh.gov.ky.
All are invited to attend the 82nd Annual Convention of the Church of God, Full Gospel Hall, Georgetown, from February 3rd through to the 10th. Daily prayer meetings at 6:30 a.m., preaching and praise at 10:30 a.m., and evangelistic services nightly at 7:15. Sundays begin with Sunday school at 9:45 a.m., followed by morning worship at 10:45, a youth service at 3 p.m., and evangelistic services at 7:15. Come and enjoy a warm Christian fellowship, praying, praising, and singing with church family at the 82nd Annual Convention of the Church of God, Full Gospel Hall, Georgetown, on the waterfront, from the 3rd to the 10th of February. Free meals served daily and transportation is available by calling 926-8180.
Is this thing working? Give me some sound over here.
Every Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 p.m. Radio Cayman Super Jam Show, the #1 drive time entertainment show for your radio, featuring Will Sinatra.
Now, sound is everything.
Enjoy a mix of pop, hip-hop, reggae, and calypso, and an entertainment trivia section. The Super Jam Show is fueled by the proud sponsorship of the Cayman Islands Football Association. CIFA, building a better future for Cayman football.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you so much for joining us. It is our monthly Mental Health Matters, and we're focusing on the chemical imbalance, CBD oil and medications in mental health with Dr. Alexandra Borden together with Dr. Mark Lacard and that indomitable, full-spirited Mr. Dennis Warren. I look at every society and we see examples of people who are champions. And Denny, if you don't mind being singled out, you're one of those people. For the greater good, we need to have this discussion.
Well, when you're singling me out, remember I didn't defend myself, right?
Yeah. But it's important. The reason why I say that is that because he's said this often, because I have incredible respect for him, Mr. Billy Adam. He says, unfortunately, in our society, not enough of us are taking time to read, to understand, to ask questions, to engage in dialogue. What I found with this particular discussion, I'll stick out Denny and we'll have a conversation. I have thousands of pages to read. I'm thinking, I just read a lot of stuff. I don't understand a lot of it, so I go back and I need to read it. That's just on one topic. I'm hoping that we'll get people understanding, at least asking questions. But legal, medical, then there are all sorts of questions and ramifications, political as well as, religious.
Yeah, well, one of the things that the caller raised was the concept of smoking.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I know that traditionally the way that cannabis is consumed is by smoking it. But the truth is that that's the worst thing that you could possibly do. Because inhaling smoke from anything, not just cannabis, but even if you were to take the Bible and burn it, mm-hmm. and inhale it, it would be deadly.
But even cooking foods, right?
Yes.
Right.
And so I would like to encourage people not to smoke. There are I'm not advocating that people break the law, but I'm just saying that instead of smoking, you only want to consume cannabis by a healthy form, as a food. And I think actually when we think about cannabis, we normally think of it as a drug, but when we think about health, I think it's far more complicated than just I have these symptoms and I need something to help me. Because I'll step away from the subject of cannabis for a second and give an example. The British Navy lost hundreds of thousands of sailors to scurvy. What was the problem? Vitamin C deficiency. And so when you think about health, not just physical health, but mental health, because it's all dependent upon the good functioning of all parts of your body, not just your nervous system, your endocrine system, your immune system, and each of those have proteins that make them run smoothly. And cannabis, CBD in particular, allows for homeostasis of all of those systems because it interacts with receptors that help to regulate, upregulate, and downregulate ones to give your body certain effects that help with depression and anxiety and stuff like that, right? But what I'm getting at is that in order for this machine that we call the human body to work properly, you need to consume adequate amounts of essential nutrients, right? Our body creates cannabinoids, right? Our brain creates them on demand when they're needed. And so the point that I'm getting at is that when I was reading a lot about this, I started to come to an understanding that this is not just about a medicine. It's about the word that came to my mind was, instead of medication, deficiency came to my mind. And so, because Genesis chapter 1 verse 29 refers to just what the ideal diet is. And what the ideal diet is fruits and herbs. And it defined what they were. Fruits containing seeds, and herbs are trees that bear seeds, but that don't bear fruit. And cannabis is a tree that bears seed, so it's a herb. And so basically what I'm referring to is eating a variety of natural substances that gives your body the things that it needs in order to build and to maintain the body so that you're healthy and so that you can be preventative. Because if you're not preventative by not consuming enough vitamin C, it'll kill you. That's why it's essential, right? And so given what I've read about what cannabis is and the benefits that it has, I see it as something that you can consume as food. And in so doing, you are preventative because you're giving your body in small quantities the substances it needs to work with, to build and to repair and to function.
So if I may ask then, from the medical perspective, sometimes as physicians, as part of that, I don't like the word diet because some of us think that's something we need to do, but I like the idea of diet being that thing that we eat and our lifestyle. Doctors talk about make sure you get your vitamins and minerals.
Yes.
So they got this combination, this balance. When we're looking at cannabis and cannabinoids and the like, is part of the challenge that the different terms we use, not just how to describe it colloquially, ganja, marijuana, but we talk about hemp, and we use all these things almost interchangeable. Are they in fact, synonymous, or is it so distinct that this is what you're talking about and this is what you need to be focusing on. And then on that, come back to the issue of smoking, whether it's food. We're told you don't burn your food when you're barbecuing because of the carcinogenic consequences. Smoking a cigarette, smoking whatever is bad. Can we have the benefits of cannabis? That's the word I'll use. You tell me if it's not the right one. In this form for the medicinal, the preventative, the restorative, and the like, without having it consumed via smoking, or you need to have one to have the other?
So, excellent question. So, several things. First of all, there are a lot of different terms, as you said, and some of them are legitimate. Some of them are used or have been used politically to actually create a certain mindset about cannabis. So marijuana is not a correct term. If we look back at the history of the term marijuana, it was first used in the 1930s. I think the caller had kind of alluded to after Prohibition. The term was used by the then head or the first head of the drug control policy in the White House at that time, who was or had certain views about certain types of people in the United States. The term marijuana was used because it was a slang term reportedly that Mexicans had used. And it was brought in reportedly again into the United States through the southern border by Mexican immigrants. It was also brought by sailors who came into the southern coast, into New Orleans, and introduced it there. A lot of African-American jazz musicians and other Latin and Hispanic people were using it initially. And it was viewed that use would destroy or damage the political balance as they viewed it at that time. So the term marijuana, or marijuana as it was used at that time, was meant to be a derogatory term about the use of this plant. As a physician, I never use that term. It's cannabis.
Yeah.
Hemp is another legitimate term, and it's a variation. Hemp is really, just to simplify, the version of the cannabis plant that does not have any active THC.
Less than 1%.
Less than 1%. Okay. So that's one issue with the terms. From just a medical perspective, we have cannabis oil here in the Cayman Islands.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, so when we come back, you want to hear about that aspect of it, and we're going to pause, take a break. Why? Maybe a cliffhanger. It's our news headline. So stay tuned. When we come back, we'll tell you about what we have here. You want to know? Stay tuned.
Last month, 6 members of the Faith Hospital's medical team completed Cayman BRAC's first air medical training course that enhances the safety of critically ill or injured patients needing airlift services from the BRAC or higher level treatment. The staff concluded the 40-hour air medical crew course within 5 days, gaining invaluable and advanced level experience in patient care continuity. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines and news elsewhere. British and French skiers are among 4 people found dead after an avalanche near the Italian resort of Courmayeur today. 2 people from the UK and 2 from France were reported missing on Sunday afternoon when the risk of avalanches in the area was high. Searchers found all 4 bodies today after a lengthy search. Atlanta rapper 21 Savage has been arrested by U.S. immigration officials who say he is actually from the UK. The rapper, Shea bin Abraham Joseph, came to the U.S. in July of 2005, aged 12, and failed to leave when his visa expired a year later. An Immigration and Customs Enforcement spokesman said he was in the country illegally and is a convicted felon. In previous interviews, Abraham Joseph has described a childhood in Atlanta. And Amazon has defended its facial recognition tool, Recognition, against claims of racial and gender bias following a study published by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The researchers compared tools from 5 companies, including Microsoft and IBM. While none was 100% accurate, it found that Amazon's Recognition tool performed the worst when it came to recognizing women with darker skin. Amazon said the study was misleading. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
All right, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thanks so much for joining us for our monthly mental health matters as we look at cannabis and CBD oils and the like. Dr. Alexandra Borden together with Dr. Mark Lockhart and Mr. Denny Warren, our guest. Thank you very much. And I trust that as people listen, that they understand why the discussion, that they won't hold it against any of you for keeping my company. And look at what he's going to have on our schedule today, that discussion. But this is something that is happening globally. And in some facets, perhaps not as informed and perhaps not as timely or appropriate. Maybe there are different reasons, economic, political, or socially, as to why it's being driven in certain quarters. Maybe I'll even comment on that later on, but we'll see. I still have my job since Friday, so let me see if I want to keep it tomorrow. But Dr. Lockhart, from that perspective, we were asking this before the break, so thank you for letting us interject for the news.
Yes. Thank you for that. So we were talking about what we have here.
Mm-hmm.
And following up on what Denny was saying, smoking cannabis is not a prescribed form of ingesting from a medication standpoint here in the Cayman Islands. We have cannabis oil, and we have different types of the oil. The differences being in the percentage of CBD to THC. So something else we have to be clear about, we've been focusing on CBD, but the products that we do have on island do contain some THC. Some products have very high or higher amounts of CBD to THC. Others have a balanced and equal amount of THC to CBD. And there is one product that has a higher amount of THC to CBD. And again, because while we have more information in the overall limited information that we have, within that subset, we have more information about the medicinal benefits of CBD. We're also finding more and more valuable information about the benefits of THC, the aspect that does cause the euphoria, that it can have beneficial uses for chronic severe pain and other types of disorders. And it's more about modulating the amount of it rather than us discounting it completely and saying that it serves no purpose. Moving forward in terms of possibly decriminalizing cannabis so that we can explore more of its benefits, can actually open up the options of us being able to help more people and to help young people who may be even dependent on cannabis that they're smoking right now. That we could come up with different formulations of high and higher potency CBD type options to counteract and cure their addiction using the same plant but a different variation of it. As Denny was saying, which is extremely right on and valuable, is the numbers of additional benefits from this plant. And that is based on, as we had said earlier, the hundreds of chemicals in it. So what we're also finding is that the whole plant, actually eaten or used in different ways, actually has what's called an entourage effect, meaning it not only the CBD, but the other chemicals go along with it to enhance and augment potential benefits that we haven't even seen yet, because we haven't even been able to have the legal framework in place to be able to have proper studies done. Another thing is that, remember, this plant, in terms of getting that entourage effect and what Denny was talking about, how it's grown, thrives on sunlight, thrives on warm weather, thrives on the weather that we have in this part of the world. And we're also finding now that the synthetically produced products are not as potent or effective as the naturally grown products. So this is something that's in our part of the world. And I think, again, to a certain level and a political basis, I think there's certain forces out there that don't want Caribbean islands and countries to be legalizing and to be developing products and to be growing plants and so on. I think certain jurisdictions would love for their labs to produce it and to sell it to us.
Right. Something I want to ask. I don't want, for two reasons, the time, but also not to put us on a tangent. So just as an ordinary person trying to be informed about things, and I was looking at the discussion today, and thanks to Dr. Borden for all the different links to the different studies and the like, and they'll be up on the website for people to look at. So please, just read. I honestly, you can't, it's like the Bible. You can go to church and you can get it read to you, but if you don't read it yourself, you miss a lot. You miss a lot. I just saying that, so any pastor is offended, well, call Dr. Lockhart. He put you in touch with me. The moringa tree. It's in this part of the world. Mm-hmm. I have a friend who says, and I don't want to say how old she is, but she's my age, so she's young. That tree has been in the family's yard forever, mm-hmm. and only in recent years that they've actually used the tree. Beautiful flowers. Mm-hmm. Someone from another part of the world where it's common would come and eat the flowers and eat the leaves and cook it this way and do it that way and take the seed, and there are tremendous benefits that are known to these people. Now, I don't know that they smoke it, I don't think, but they boil it and then they eat it raw and different things. So I was trying to look at that and say, here's a tree, very beautiful. It's right there. If I brought it in the office today, I wouldn't get in trouble for it, to the best of my knowledge. But if I had a possession of, I won't say ganja plant, but that's the wrong word. What would be the legal term for the plant that grows it? Then is that
cannabis?
Cannabis. Okay, that's the word we're going to use. If I had one of them, because apparently the leaves are pretty. If I had one of them, that would be illegal for me to have a potted plant or one in my backyard.
It'd be illegal just for you to have a picture of it.
Oh, you didn't see my notes, but that was my next question. So if I had a T-shirt with it, not
that's illegal.
That would be illegal.
Yes, it's under the customs regulations.
Well, I don't really have ever tried smoking a T-shirt, much less so. But it's partly in jest. But
that's really an attempt to control how you think.
Okay,
and that's not good.
Okay, all right. I as I digress, that I digest it. So where are we today then? Go back to the notion. If we were to advance, there is the political aspect of it, the social consciousness and the like. And to have it, we talk about the different types. Dr. Lockhart, you mentioned we don't have this type here of the cannabinoids and the like. That make sure I didn't misunderstand you. There are different versions and types of cannabinoids?
So what it is that medical cannabis is legal here, from the standpoint of cannabis oil.
Okay.
So we do not have the flowered plant here to be prescribed. That is illegal.
Okay.
We do not have any type of combined form that you would call hash or any concentrated forms. What we have is the oil, which is generally mixed with some other lighter type of an oil, because the actual cannabis oil is very heavy. So sometimes they use olive oil or coconut oil.
Okay.
Yes, as an effort to make it more easily usable.
Okay.
And we have different combinations of these oils in terms of their combination of CBD to THC, which are just two of the major products found in cannabis. So somebody, depending on what ailment they may present with, whether it's something with a physical pain or even anxiety or insomnia, that would then guide the physician onto which type of oil they would prescribe. The person then ingests the oil under their tongue.
Okay.
So it's taken in orally, and that's how it's ingested at this point.
Okay. I want to clarify, just to make sure, two things. One, are there limitations and restrictions both on the types that we can get in here?
Yes. So that's the issue, is that there are not a whole lot of limitations on the types. The limitation comes from the fact that we have to source it overseas.
Right.
So we have to depend on what the sources are able to give us. An interesting point is that with the recent legalization completely in Canada, we have now had a problem here where our supply has dropped. They're going to look after their own first.
So much for food security? Sorry.
We're 60,000 people, right? Yeah. We're no longer a priority for them to be exporting it here as much as.
Okay.
That brings up one of the problems. So we have patients that have started on the treatment, and it's being slightly interrupted because now we're trying to compound or have pharmacies develop and make certain types of cannabis oil here. One problem I put out is, what is the base product that's being used?
Yeah.
What is being brought in?
Well, my understanding is in the stuff that's coming out of Canada, the base product is olive oil, which isn't ideal. The more ideal is the coconut oil.
Yeah.
And then that brings up what we're saying, that this whole process we're talking about in terms of potentially decriminalizing and moving forward with the medicinal basis, again, and I want to highlight this, is not to allow our 12, 13, and 14-year-olds to smoke more. That's not what it's about. It's actually the opposite.
Yeah.
It's to bring it from hidden behind the bleachers, hidden behind the house, hidden outside, buying things that are substandard, and legalizing the product so that we can really then prevent and monitor properly the younger people from not using it until they are ready or they are required. When we look at the drug offenses for 2017, the RCIPS, and we just look at the possession of ganja and the arrest for ganja, if we were to take off those 80 people a year or 90-something, almost 100 people a year that are arrested just for possession of ganja, I think then that could make the police focus on more serious issues.
Yeah.
Now, the criticism that somebody might say is, what is Lockhart talking about then when you don't arrest? Then all these people are just going to be smoking and so on. No, I say instead of focusing it from criminalizing it, let's put it where it belongs. Let's put it in the hospital. Let's put it in the psychologist's office. Let's put it in the psychiatrist, in the counselor's office. Let's treat this rather than criminalizing behavior and stigmatizing our young people and others.
And not, other than just someone want to understand, and we will probably get in, if we can, to some of the, not only the preventative, but some of the potential uses in treatments and the like. But as I was listening to you, I wanted to, partly because of some of the questions that were asked of me, were there limitations on the sources of, can we only get it from here? So some people in our community believe that we're restricted on where we can source, our cannabis.
Yes.
Yeah, we are. And it has to do with the UN Single Convention on Narcotics, which I think was done in 1961. So we do have a limitation on where we can get it from.
And that already limited supply, Dr. Boyd. Further limits our availability.
Correct.
I mean,
and it limits the quality.
It comes back to that.
And so when the irony is that we're in the middle of the Caribbean where we'll probably grow better than anywhere else, that's why a lot of the Canadian companies are going to places like Jamaica and so on and jumping in right away to get their foot on the ground.
Okay. And there's an economic benefit to this as well. I mean, we're looking at the Canadian market to see what the government is doing relative to potential taxation and potentially how much revenue can be generated from it, from that perspective, but also the businesses and the big tobacco buying up, companies.
There's one that I want to get in on that part there. One of the problems that I've had people complain to me about is that even though that it's legal on the island, it's still out of their reach because the cost is too high.
Okay.
And for a short period of time, I think there were one or two places that were covering it. But I don't think that's the case anymore. And so it's there, but you can't reach out and touch it because you can't afford it. And so we really need to address that issue.
Yeah. But
that's a key issue, and that's part of the whole thing that we're talking about. Definitely.
Exhibit A, honestly. No, but this is why I'm very grateful when Dr. Bond was, sort of formulating this year's discussion that this will be one of the first items on the agenda for the year, because credible people, competent people, respectful and respectable panelists like yourselves may help us to be informed. No, I don't think anybody is saying it'd be a free-for-all, they're smoking as one. That is not what is being said.
No, I every time I have a conversation with people about it and they say to me about smoking, I say, smoking is that's like killing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you want to kill yourself? I mean, why would you want to pay to get something to kill yourself? It doesn't make any sense. And so, basically, what the problem is that when you smoke, using what is considered a traditional method, which is what they call a spliff, the temperatures in that could go almost 2,000 degrees, right? And 2,000 degrees, what that's going to do is you're going to be inhaling some very deadly stuff, right? Now, there's this new phenomenon called vaping, and I think of vaping, I put it in two categories. One is vaping that isn't vaping, and one is vaping that is vaping. Because people tend to don't see the difference, but basically if you vape, the vaporization is actually a legitimate medical form of ingesting. But it has to be at a temperature that does not burn the substance and turn it into smoke. Mm-hmm. Okay? Because then it's no longer vaping. Mm-hmm. And so if you go and you get one of these cheap little vape pens from somewhere and it doesn't have temperature control, that's not vaping.
Mm-hmm.
It's smoking under the guise of vaping. Right? So vaping, so that it's just hot enough to vaporize the substances that you want and not create smoke is what you would want to do as opposed to smoking.
Right. Just quickly to check. Let's not confirm for those of us who are not sure. There is a legal age at which now you can smoke in Cayman. We've passed legislation. Was it 16, 18? What's the legal age? Is there a legal age? And so what is it?
I don't.
For cigarette
smoking? For cigarette smoking.
It would be 18, I would imagine.
Okay. I would imagine.
Okay, so we have passed legislation. Yeah. Vaping, is there an age, or it doesn't matter?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
No, and this is not. I actually had reached out to someone, but I didn't see the response yet, because I've asked that question of a number of people, and they were seeing response. Right. Not sure. Dr. Borden, and I'll say one more thing about Dr. Borden.
Oh, it's coming up a lot with high school, middle school kids, and everyone thinking it's safe.
Safe,
but
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I did, right, in preparing, and Miss Norma's going to say, well, don't put those hours in this. And I just kidding. So I went to watch, based on what Danny was saying, people who were vaping, and a fellow with me was pointing out certain things. All I could, maybe the best way to describe it is a puff of smoke, a cloud of smoke. So there's this thing coming from these dragons, and you can't see them when they, and you can't see them anymore. And then there was one guy where, it doesn't look like there's anything coming out. So that's what you're talking about.
Right. Well, the more I think about what you just asked me, is that I would say this. I would imagine that I don't know this with absolute fact, but right. I would imagine that the law regarding smoking is about not smoking prohibited drugs and tobacco, right? And so the stuff that is vaped isn't prohibited substances, right? But technically, if you're using a vaporizer that isn't temperature controlled and would turn that into smoke, then technically they're still smoking, which is still not good.
Right. And I've had a couple of physicians, informally, just questions in passing, but specifically asked them. And they expressed concern that, one, we're not quite sure, not enough research and the like, of just what you're saying, that this could have some serious ill effects long term, of which we're unaware.
So we are actually seeing that. And there are two sides to that. There's one side, again, which is the marketing side, that having vape flavors like bubble gum and strawberry, and I don't think many of us at this table are that much into bubble gum anymore. I think when you use that term, you're targeting a very young group. That's one part. The second part is that, just as Danny said, depending on the method or the apparatus of what you're using, you might not really be vaping. And what we're really seeing right now is that the real vape devices are quite expensive. They're not the little simple pens that you see laying around. So for the most part, many people are not really vaping. They're actually heating up whatever they're ingesting at a very high level that is creating carcinogens and toxins for the body. So I think you're going to be seeing more and more and hearing more information worldwide about clamping down on vaping and the dangers that it causes physically.
So not empirical, by any means not any significant statistical.
Well, what we're talking about, turning something into smoke versus vaping, that's a scientific fact.
No, sorry. What I was about to share with you is that I've then reached out to parents, friends, others, to gauge their perception of vaping. And I'm glad that you allow us to just, bring this into the equation as we look at cannabis. Parents are saying, well, it's not that harm. I mean, you can't smell it. It smells good. It doesn't seem to be. Again, ill-informed, unsure of what. And so this child who is 12, 13, 14, 16, 18, whatever the age, is doing this thing and seemingly okay because they can do it indoors. They can do it while they're driving. There seems to be nothing wrong with it. And I believe we're doing a disservice to our society and to our children without really knowing.
I've read some articles where people are having breathing issues as a result of it. What I would say is that instead of doing that, you'd be safer having a cannabis salad.
Well, potentially, it's highly probable. But it comes back into the political, the societal norms, my view, the heavy pressures on big business to ensure a particular mindset. You look at newspaper headlines, for instance. Again, words are crucial. Friday's headline in the leading paper says, some condo, voting to demolish, aging or something. That one word, I'm thinking, wow, so the old is no longer a value. If you go through Europe and those buildings that are centuries old, it's not to pick on them, it's just how we use a word. Right? It can be, I'm pretty sure, in court, the counsel will say, well, that's a leading, that's drawing an inference. Again, ganja, marijuana, or cannabis.
Yeah.
What's the, Dr. Warren?
Yeah, and I think a big one is that thinking because something is legal, it's safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that stood out to me with the CBD oil with my clients is that even with the psychiatric medications in particular, they are easily abused. Adderall, even some of the antipsychotics that sound absolutely terrible, very effective, but are primarily for they cause a lot of sedation, are very big on the black market. So I think just because something's legal doesn't mean it's safe.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of evidence that's growing to support the use of cannabis oil. And I think that was what was really striking to me in preparing for today, between depression as well as multiple anxiety disorders. But the issue is that we don't have long-term studies or as strong of studies as we would like because of the limitations on it.
All right. Now, I know that today's discussion is normally to 1:30. Are we willing to stay a little longer? I know you guys have been gracious with it. Let's confirm it. So to our guests, we're going to, by design, because our guests are so wonderful, we're going to spend a little extra time. We're going to take some calls when we come back as well. And hopefully, Ms. Susan will orchestrate that the next break can be later. But let's see what happens. Small steps. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
Hi, I'm Dawn McLean Brady, President of the Cayman Islands Small Business Association, better known as CISPA. Small businesses drive Cayman's economy. As small business owners, we depend on government to create an environment where we, as entrepreneurs, can do what we do best, and that's to provide products and services that are valuable to our customers and, in turn, employ others. The cruise piers and cargo ports provide these opportunities. Encourage our government to build a port and let the Caymanian entrepreneurial spirit shine. Support the port, support our tourism.
The 15th annual Cayman Economic Outlook returns on February 28th for another year of educating, informing, and stimulating the local community, bringing together industry thought leaders and business professionals to explore their theme, Dynamic New World, Braving the Turmoil. Speakers include economist Norina Hertz, University of Oxford professor Ian Golden, digital revolution journalist Andreas Ekstrom, biotechnology futurist Jamie Metzel, and professional surfer Mark Matthews. Tickets are selling fast. Reserve your seat at rfceo.ky.
Tune in Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 p.m. Exclusive. Radio Cayman's Super Jam Show, the #1 drive time entertainment show on your radio, featuring Will Sinatra. Enjoy a mix of pop, hip-hop, dancehall, and soca.
The Super Jam Show is fueled by the proud sponsorship of Fitness Plus and Train with Dre.
Get top-rated personal training or build your very own home or office gym today.
Headlines.
With the latest headlines.
All the news when you want it. Tune in to Radio Cayman for hourly headlines of the day's top stories.
One of Cayman's bright and shining young stars.
Local, regional, international.
Turning to international news.
Updates on the hour between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays. Radio Cayman News.
Headlines.
Your voice, your choice for today's biggest news.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you so much for sharing with us. It's our monthly mental health matters, and we're talking about the chemical imbalance, CBD oil, and medications in mental health. Dr. Alexandra Borden, together with Dr. Mark Lockhart and Mr. Denny Warren, are our guests. Thanks so much for agreeing, for allowing us to have an extended discussion. And hopefully, as the public listens, maybe they'll be more resigned to looking at this thing as objectively and being cemented in their view. Yes or no, or whatever their view is, but a meaningful discussion. So prior to the break, where were we? We were going to go somewhere. Couple more questions. But Danny, who wants to jump in next?
I think she was talking.
Okay.
Because I was curious about the use on island.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things I did find was an article where Mr. Pello, who's a pharmacist on island, talked about 166 patients that they had in a recent study.
Mm-hmm.
They were prescribed the cannabis oil for different ailments, from chronic pain to anxiety to nausea brought on by chemotherapy. And actually it's been prescribed to men, women, and dogs. So it's been prescribed in a lot of different ways. And actually 84% of them had found that the drug had been beneficial. So I thought that was interesting to have some data from on island and people who are here and using the medications that we're talking about.
So one of the major benefits that we're seeing on island on a daily basis is the use of cannabis oil to modulate and reduce chronic pain. It's interesting because just a few days ago, or I think it was either probably towards the middle of last week, it was announced in the U.S. I don't know if it was the FDA or one of the regulatory agencies in the States have just now allowed cannabis oil to be prescribed to those that are already getting opiate medications without them having to go through the whole process of being approved to get medical cannabis. So in other words, anyone that's on an opiate right now in many parts of the United States can go to their physician and say, I would rather get cannabis oil instead because of the safety profile.
Right.
So what we're seeing here is that we have quite a number of people with chronic pain that have been treated with things like pethidine and other very addictive pain medications, who we are able to add and titrate and use the cannabis oil and lower the amount of pain meds, opiates that they've been taking. I have patients that I've treated that we've been able to take completely off of the dependency-causing pain medications that can depress breathing and cause death. And these people are functioning very well today just on their cannabis oil. So that's one major group that we're seeing a benefit right now.
I want to ask more about, Dr. White, ask more about benefits, but equally, if you're on medications, maybe heart, perhaps for stroke or other things, chances are you'll be on them forever. With treatment using cannabis oils and the like, is that the same thing that if you get on it under your sort of supervision of your physician, that'll be forever, just like you would for some medications?
So that's an interesting question, because that's another misperception, or regarding cannabis in general. The addictive potential of cannabis is extremely low, and even those that are quote unquote addicted to it, it's more of a psychological addiction, which means that there are deeper issues that were pushing them towards using it. I made a little note earlier when you said, or we were talking, I think you're talking as your childhood, and we all, especially those that of us have grown up in the Caribbean, realize that there are always people who are smoking and so on, but many of us never touched it. So the belief that if it now becomes, or we move further along the process of legalization or decriminalization, then that just means you're going to open the floodgate for people to use it. That's not what the studies are showing, especially in jurisdictions where it has been legal, in Switzerland, in Portugal, what we're seeing in Uruguay, in Washington State and Colorado. There was a recent 15-year study that showed that traffic accidents have actually gone down in Colorado, because one of the concerns was everybody's going to be high and driving now. Accidents went down. The use has not gone up among young people. It has not. It has stayed the same. Another belief is that you're going to have a lot of crazy people on the street. Excuse me for using that term, but I'm just being brash. That everybody's going to be high and walking around. And the studies have shown that in these areas, again, where it's been legal, we're not seeing a higher incidence in psychosis or bizarre behaviors. Actually, in certain places, we're seeing a slight decrease.
Something I wanted to ask, and Dr. Lockhart, you referenced that earlier. So for those who just joined us, it is our monthly mental health matters. We're talking about, CBD oil, we're talking about medications and mental health and chemical imbalance and the like. You referenced that, and hopefully I recall it correctly, people who are smoking now, ganja, marijuana, I deliberately use those derogatory terms as they like, maybe getting a mix of other things, laced with formaldehyde, laced with this, that, the next thing, that are creating sometimes death or serious consequences. If we legalize or somewhat decriminalize, we could potentially reduce the probability of that. Expand on that a little bit further so the parents understand.
So, the primary way, to my understanding, that cannabis is brought into the Cayman Islands is from overseas. It's smuggled. It's brought in.
Mm-hmm.
The largest proportion of cannabis, of illegal cannabis in the Cayman Islands, is not grown here, hidden. It's brought in. A large percentage is brought in by small boats from Jamaica that are also accompanied with firearms and guns. A certain percentage of that cannabis is not necessarily of the best quality, and because you're dealing with unscrupulous characters, sometimes they enhance or try to enhance the euphoric aspect of this product by adding certain things. So there was some information that we had received that in certain parts of Jamaica, for example, and this came out in the Jamaican news during their the state of emergency thing that they're having in certain parts, where they found ganja in parts of Montego Bay that was laced with formaldehyde, and a lot of the serious criminals who were caught, it was determined, and it's still being investigated, that some of the very violent and aggressive behavior that they were seeing by these young men was partly as a consequence of the type of ganja that they were smoking. They were smoking it with formaldehyde before they would go out and shoot. And they would say that it lessened disinhibitions, it made them feel, they weren't even, it clouded in a sense their consciousness. Even more so than using the cannabis by itself. Some of this is getting to us here, among other things.
I want to ask the question, and again, just guide it, because I'm trying to grapple and gauge it as properly. So I'm thinking of food. You have some food in your backyard garden. You know what you've put into it, and you know the soil mightn't be as virgin as it was, when Earth was created, but it's not that bad. And you bring the potato, the cassava, the sweet potato, the yam in, and you cook it. Versus you buy something that has been canned or processed elsewhere and is preservatives, I think we read on the package, to retain freshness, and has all these things. So, can I use the word, the ganja plant?
Yes.
It's coming in. It's going in by boat. It's a plant, so water probably won't be that good for it, I can imagine. You wrap it up, you do whatever it is. We see the police reports and the pictures, and they put formaldehyde and other stuff to preserve it, so it comes across. In its natural state, the plant in the backyard, leaves eaten and however else, like the sweet potato or the yam or the cassava, or the canned food, packaged and processed and brought from wherever, like the ganja plant. Similar sort of analogy, in a sense?
Yes, and it will also take away the illegality from it.
Okay.
So it takes out the criminal element. It cuts down. There'll be less boats needing to smuggle anything in. I'm not necessarily advocating, again, I'm speaking as a medical doctor.
Yes, sir.
So I'm not the political expert.
Susan, that's you.
But the suggestion is then that it could be grown here. Now, I'm not saying that's up to the technocrats and the experts that would say, should it be grown in specific restricted farms? Should there be licenses given to 4 or 5 cultivators? Then it's, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Should it be open up to everybody to just grow a certain amount of plants? Or that all depends. That's where the political debate would be.
Right.
My basis based on evidence, medical evidence, is that we have the potential of this medicine, of this medical food that's available, that's here in our region of the world, that can play a major benefit in helping to cure and modulate a lot of disorders that we treat and see here. And on the other side, we could also use it to help cure some of the dependencies that we do see that some people have on substances in general here by using certain aspects of this same plant.
So we definitely will get into some of the benefits, potential benefits, some of the evidence, and maybe, I'm game, Mr. Warren, if you don't mind hanging with bad company, to even talk about the socio-political and economic implications and the policies. But I know, Dr. Borden, you will have another pressing appointment. To our listeners, we will continue the discussion. Dr. Lockhart and Mr. Dana Warren will continue with this, but Dr. Borden, I know you have to very shortly say, I had enough of that fella for today.
Yeah. Well, if I may just add, we did do a poll on Facebook that asked the public if they believe there are medicinal benefits for cannabis, and actually 100% said yes. So I think there's definitely an interest in learning more about this, and I think, working closely with a medical professional, so not just ingesting everything, but working with someone there to help to regulate it can be helpful. We will post the articles on drbodden.com, and we have information on the Facebook as well for Dr. Alexandra Bodden under Mental Health Matters.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
No, thanks. We'll pause quickly. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll continue the discussion. Mr. Danny Warren and Dr. Lockhart will continue. We'll talk about some of the benefits. We'll have some other discussions, and hopefully tomorrow I'll still have a job, but we'll see. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Can you imagine where Cayman runs off renewable energy? We can. Learn how you can join government and be an energy advocate.
Visit the Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure's Facebook page to learn more.
Radio Cayman's Super Jam Show, the #1 drive time entertainment show on your radio. Enjoy a mix of pop, hip-hop,
dancehall, urban gospel, Latin hits,
reggae, and soca. The Super Jam Show is fueled by the proud sponsorship of
Savannah Pharmacy, just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
Don't forget to tune in every Monday through Friday for the 7 a.m. news, brought to you by Cayman National Bank, proudly serving the Cayman Islands since 1974. Visit Cayman National Bank today for all of your financial needs.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Welcome back to Talk Today. Thanks so much for joining us as we continue with our monthly Mental Health Matters. It's sort of like expanded edition. Dun, dun, dun. Susan, where's the theme song? We'll work on that. Again, a very, very special public thanks to Dr. Alexandra Bodden for facilitating. I don't know how she finds the time with all of the other things she does in addition to her practice and her teaching and the like. But for really appreciating the amount of work putting together this panel discussion every month. Mr. Danny Warren, together with Dr. Mark Lockhart, we have this discussion. CBD oils and the medicinal benefits, preventative as well as some of the uses. Want to go down that path?
Yeah, I guess Mr. Lockhart could talk about what his experience is with the benefits and so forth.
All right, Dr. Lockhart.
So there's a wide range of benefits. Initially, starting with the benefits of CBD on reducing seizures in children. That's really where the conversation started. It points back to about 2008, 2009. There were certain strains of very potent CBD type cannabis that was in Northern California. That was being used, and somebody had the bright idea that because of its very calming sedative effects, that maybe it would help with seizures. That started the whole process where certain scientists were able to get hold of it, which was very difficult, but they were able to. And it was really very similar to Denny's case, that there was a humanitarian issue of certain children that have certain types of infantile seizures that don't respond very well to the medications that we have available. That even in combinations of those with those medications, it would increase side effects on these young children, and that the cannabis was found to be extremely effective. Not effective, not good, but extremely effective. And that led to where we are today in terms of using it and elaborating in terms of its uses in other areas. So infantile seizures, then next was chronic pain conditions, and we're seeing that augment quite a bit in terms of the use of cannabis, medical cannabis, reducing the need for more toxic and dangerous opiates that are very problematic. Uses in other debilitating disorders, things like multiple sclerosis, which is a serious brain disorder that causes issues in movement, other types of chronic pain disorders, osteoarthritis. Because of the benefits in those disorders, people started realizing again that there are benefits on their mood. That those that had chronic pain issues or have it found that, wait a minute, I'm sleeping a bit better with this. Or my anxiety levels are less. Or I'm able to tolerate and ingest food. Whereas when I was going through my chemotherapy treatment, even the prescribed medications that were given were lacking in some of its efficacy. So we are seeing its benefit in many different areas for enhancing sleep, enhancing mood, reducing anxiety, helping with to reduce chronic pain, helping to take people off of more dangerous medications, reducing infantile seizures, end-of-life treatment, people in hospice care. It can be very beneficial from the standpoint that many times end of life we use very powerful medications to sedate or to reduce pain, but then the person is obtunded. They can't communicate with family members at all. Using stronger combinations of the CBD-THC combinations has been shown to reduce that, where people are a bit more lucid for their last days and able to function without intractable pain, for example.
Because we've seen the issue, sadly, when people are on those treatments, what they are like. Yeah.
Exactly. One area I want to highlight, though, which is very important, is the influence on psychosis. Because we all know of cases of primarily young people or somebody that smoked, whether a one-off or twice, or somebody that's chronically smoking that presents with psychotic behavior. They're not in touch with reality. They're hearing voices. They're seeing things. And we all come to the conclusion and say, you know what, they're smoking the ganja. The ganja is causing it. There have been a few studies that have been done that are showing that it seems that there is a predisposition among some of us that if and when we do smoke, it can precipitate these psychotic type episodes. So I want to be clear too that, like with any other substance on this planet, whether it be caffeine or others, it is not for everybody.
Right. And I'm glad you referenced the caffeine, and I did it deliberately, I think safely, I think properly and so on. But just to demonstrate that if you're conscious of who you are and know, maybe someone would eat a particular thing and it doesn't agree with us, right. Whatever that thing is, we shouldn't eat that much of it or at all. The caffeine, I believe a lot of us consume that daily.
Right.
Sometimes a couple of cups every hour.
Right. But there are some people that know that they touch a half a cup.
Yep.
And they're tremulous, they're shaky, they're agitated, and they say, that's not good for me.
Exactly. And you speak to them, they eat your head off, right?
So we want to be clear, I think all of us, that while there are tremendous benefits that we're seeing from this, that this is a medication, this is a medicine also. And I keep saying medication, but I agree with what Denny is saying, that it's a medical food. There's so many other entourage effects and we're just touching on it, but it is not for everybody.
if I may ask, then you referenced the example of the child, and we conclude always, because he's smoking and what have you, and then the perhaps the genetic, makeup of the child and the predisposing factors.
Right.
If that person was later on given CBD oil for something,
so
doc.
No. So that's another reason why we're seeing, some of us in the medical community, that we need to really look at finding a pathway to open up for more use and proper controlled studies. Because the fascinating thing we're now seeing is that while there's a subset of young people primarily and others that smoke cannabis, even chronically or otherwise, that respond with very unusual or bizarre behavior, the same cannabis, a certain component, the CBD component, when given in high doses, counteract the negative reaction from the THC aspect. But keeping and limiting the ability for us to investigate these things, or keeping this plant just completely illegal, limits our ability to be able to find curative approaches to helping young people, for example, that show up. So an example would be a 15-year-old goes into A&E right now. They're acting bizarre. The family found them in the house. They were crawling on the floor. They were acting strange. They'd smoked something that's felt to be marijuana, and they don't know if it was laced or what. They're having hallucinations. If we were to have certain types of CBD in high doses, it could actually counteract and bring them down from that reaction, because that reaction is primarily due to high levels of THC.
Okay.
We could actually address those symptoms potentially without using other types of medications that would have a potential higher risk of side effects. But we don't have the availability of that because we haven't done enough studies because of the illegal nature of cannabis for all these years, not just here but in other areas.
Okay, so let us ask a couple of things in the administration of it. You referenced earlier under your tongue. That's a drop, I presume. How is it done? How is it in this jurisdiction legal, allowed to be done? How does that compare to other places? And are there other ways?
Smoking is still illegal. And any medical form of administration is lawful.
So an injection is okay? IV is
well,
the medical
you don't
administration?
You normally don't inject it. It's either consumed orally, just either under the tongue or by eating it, just like swallowing, like if you're swallowing a pill or whatever.
Okay.
And then it could be done topically, because if, for example, you might have skin cancer or whatever, you can just rub it right onto the affected area. But that's essentially the way you do it.
And one other rare way is suppositories.
Right, I forgot that.
But there is no IV, there is no smoking.
Right, and there's no...
and how we use it here, again, it's oral. So depending on the combination of THC to CBD and the dose that you're on would determine how much then is prescribed for you to place under your tongue. It's kept under the tongue for a few minutes because that's where it's absorbed better. Because if it's swallowed immediately, you lose about half of, or up to 40% of the effectiveness, and that's just a metabolic action where it passes through the liver. And now that does not mean that it's not beneficial if you eat it. Because again, it depends on what you're treating and what you're using it for.
Right.
So in cases when we're using it for chronic pain, we want a higher blood level of the cannabis to bring down that discomfort. So we want it absorbed as fast as possible. It generally takes between 30 to 90 minutes when it's taken orally under the tongue for it to be absorbed. But it lasts longer in terms of its benefit than even smoking. So I've actually counseled people that have been smoking cannabis to treat certain ailments, chronic pain, and so on. And when it's really explained to them and they are converted over to the oil, they find that they feel much better because they're able to take in a dose, do it the proper way, and then they get a benefit where it might take a half an hour to an hour to get to the peak, but it lasts much longer. Right. So they're not smoking every hour, every 2 hours.
Right. And on top of that, smoking, you only get about 25% out of it. So that's kind of like going to the store and only getting a quarter of what you pay for it.
Yeah. You just give the guy $1 and he will give you 25 cents.
Yeah, it's foolishness.
And then from that perspective, and I want to ask that so people understand. Now, the possession of the oil, you're in Cayman and you need to be legal with it. Right. What is it that you need to do?
So you need a prescription. It must be prescribed by a licensed physician here in the Cayman Islands. So that's one thing that some people have. I've seen people that have come from Canada or other places in the States where it's legal, and they say, I have a card from California and so on. That's not valid. You have to see a licensed practitioner here, be prescribed. Another question people ask is that, okay, you've prescribed me my oil, but God forbid if something was to happen or I'm stopped or something and somebody sees this oil, what do I show? Because we don't have cards or IDs here. So I generally tell people that I treat that, whenever we go to the pharmacy, they clip and give you like a little receipt on top of the bag that gives the name and like what the medication is. I say save that little piece of paper.
Right. And when we come back from the break, then I'll ask about the laws and the societal sort of influence or whatever it is we need. Do we need to look at laws? Because those are some of the questions. Police pulls you over, can I see your driver's license? Well, you can produce something. Right. Well, is there something that you can produce? So we talk about that and with some of the other benefits. When we come back, we'll ask you to join us. Certainly call if you want. Continue to listen, by all means. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Follow Radio Cayman on Twitter. All the latest information, breaking news, community events, and more. Follow us at twitter.com/Radio Cayman.
Radio Cayman.
Radio Cayman's newsroom. These are the biggest stories right now.
The people of Bordentown attended the first Royal Cayman Islands Police Service Crime Prevention Workshop of 2019. Chief Inspector Everton Spence said it's RCIPS's intention to host educational meetings in each community policing beat this year. Officers demonstrated new devices for home and property, as well as pin alarms that can warn while exercising outside to enhance personal safety. RCIPS is encouraging smartphone users to download the new RCIPS app to learn how to get in touch with their neighborhood officer. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines and news elsewhere. Climate change poses a growing threat to the glaciers found in the Hindu Kush and Himalayan mountain ranges, according to a new report. The study found that if CO2 emissions are not cut rapidly, 2/3 of these giant ice fields could disappear. Even if the world limits the temperature to rise to 1.5 Celsius this century, at least 1/3 of the ice would go. The glaciers are a critical water source for 250 million people living across 8 different countries. A body has been seen in the underwater wreckage of the plane that was carrying footballer Emiliano Sala and pilot David Ebertson. A search on Sunday found the Piper Malibu plane on the seabed off Guernsey, almost 2 weeks after it went missing. The Air Accident Investigation Branch confirmed the sighting today. Rescue teams are now developing a recovery plan for the plane, which is 207 feet below water. And the coroner for Northern Ireland has called the rising number of deaths linked to fake versions of the anti-anxiety drug Xanax an escalating crisis. Joe McCriskin says he's signing off on alprazolam-related death nearly once a week. He says the deaths are a very tiny tip of what is a very huge iceberg. Xanax is used to treat anxiety and panic attacks. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. K-Man. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio K-Man is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio K-Man.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thanks for joining us, especially, again, thanks to Dr. Lockhart, Mr. Dana Warren. And as we have this discussion on CBD oil in particular, we're looking at mental health. The medicinal qualities and benefits. We've seen some, lowering cholesterol, diabetes, other benefits. What about on the heart, cardiovascular disease, and on the brain?
Right. So, as we were just saying, it's not for everyone, and you should still use or be prescribed medicinal cannabis under a physician's care. Because especially when we talk about cardiovascular disease, that is an area there where there should be some caution.
Mm-hmm.
There have been studies that have shown an increase in heart attacks or myocardial infarctions up to about 4 hours, within 4 hours after smoking cannabis. Some of that is dependent on how much the person smoked and the levels of THC and also their cardiovascular health. So because of those studies, we are cautious in prescribing the cannabis oil, although, again, it's used in a different way, but we're still very cautious in those that have any serious cardiovascular issues. Partly what happens is that because of its calming effect overall, the cannabis oil does lower heart rate, which in turn lowers the output and the heart's ability to pump to a certain extent. And that, depending on other issues that the person may be going through, can potentially affect their heart and maybe increase the risk of myocardial infarctions. Now, again, what we feel that is more related to smoking and related to the levels of the THC more than anything. But that's an area of caution in terms of prescribing.
Mm-hmm.
Another area of caution is using it in children in general. So we do prescribe at times for cases of autism. We do, as we said, we have found the one exception, or a major exception, are those with severe infantile seizures. But outside of that, we are cautious in terms of how we prescribe and use it in those who are, let's say, below the age of 18 and younger. Part of it, too, is because of the developing brain. And while we know it has lots of benefits, we need to have a little bit more from the resources and studies as to the potential effects over long-term brain development in younger people. And then again, this is all dependent on the types of CBD versus THC or combinations that we're talking about.
Then as I look at things and think of the socioeconomic, even the socio-political ramifications at times, and I believe sometimes our societies fail to realize that whatever is on the political agenda, is there because there's a driver somewhere. We may call them special interests or what have you. But the populace can be part of that driver as well, if we're informed.
Oh, absolutely. The most things that are political and controlled in this way have to do with special interests. Like Dr. Lockhart was outlining before, how it became prohibited in the U.S. My own view about reading the material that I've gotten on it, I don't see where the drug companies are able to synthesize it yet, and in a form that works, and I think basically that's what the problem is. They want a patent on it. It's my view, but I as I said earlier about it being used as a food. The health benefits of eating raw food. Now, in the case of cannabis, it's very fibrous, right? So what that means is that if you were to eat that raw as a food, you get no psychoactive properties, and you get the benefit of the CBDA, which helps in a lot of different things. But one of the things that eating high fiber foods does for you is that it helps balance out the good and bad bacteria in your intestine. Because while from a fiber perspective, we don't derive a benefit directly from the fiber, the good and bad bacteria consume fiber, and depending on what it is that you're actually eating, you tilt the balance either more towards the favor of the good bacteria or towards the bad. So if you're eating fried chicken and sugar, that's the bad bacteria, right? And fiber, you're tilting it towards the good bacteria. And what that means is that you'll have a healthier microbiome. And since the majority of your immune system is in your intestine, you have a healthier immune system, right? And part of the reason why cannabinoids are important to this process is that our body actually produces some of these itself, but some would have to be consumed. And so when you consume it, you give your body the things it needs to function in the way that is proper. And so an example would be that since we're talking about the immune system, we're talking about regulating cytokines, right? And so you have your nervous system that...
These amino acids and stuff.
Right. And okay. You're dealing with, say, the neurotransmitters are running your nervous system, right? And then you have hormones running your endocrine system. And all of these things have to have all of their proper nutritional requirements in order to be able to do the transcription, the modulation, and the expression, and the signaling. Your body just needs what it needs. So if you think of your body as this very complex construction site, and you don't deliver the materials that it needs, which is essential nutrients, how are the workers, which are the proteins in your body, going to perform the task if you don't give them the materials it needs to work with?
When we come back, this whole notion that within our sort of educational system, basic biology and the like, and as you were saying, I was thinking back to that, the building blocks of this, and we had a class on that. How much recall those things and the connectors in our brain and the muscle memory that we talk about now, but more importantly, those firing of the neurons in the brain functioning because it's given enough energy and the resources. Are we unconsciously, if that's the right word to use, doing things to inhibit our mental dexterity or our mental health? And could the use of CBD, for instance, as a preventative measure, help us to be healthier all around, the biological as well as the mental?
Yeah, because what you're looking to do is that, okay, what is being said about cannabis right now by those in the scientific community? They're looking at this and how it's affecting the homeostasis. So, if you have, for example, if you have inflammation, right? In order to counteract inflammation, you would need to upregulate the pathways that deal with anti-inflammatory as opposed to inflammatory.
Mm-hmm.
And so the cannabinoids have the properties in order to be able to do that. Not just anti-inflammatory, but it's also antipsychotic. Okay? So what we're talking about is not just a medicine. That's why I used the word deficiency earlier, because deficiency is dealing with things that you fail to give your body. I'll give you an example: vitamin D. Vitamin D controls almost 2,000 functions in the human body. You can't absorb calcium without it, right? And so if you fail to, like, say if you have a mother who's a pregnant woman and she is deficient in vitamin D, one of the outcomes of that could be that the child could have rickets. The child could have, and the symptoms of that is bow legs. So have you seen someone with bow legs and wonder why they have bow legs? I mean, we could, I'm not saying it's in all cases, but in some cases, it's because of deficiencies. Just like we were talking about what happens when you have deficiency in vitamin C. And so this idea of approaching everything from this very sanitized, isolated perspective about isolating molecules, I think that's going overboard in most cases, because in most cases what you just need is what nature provides in its natural form.
All right.
Following on that, we have, and Denny has alluded to it, we have CBD receptors in our brain and throughout our body. The gut, the intestine, has the highest number of CBD receptors. Why are humans born with CBD receptors?
When I was reading upon it, right, and I was thinking of the whole notion of, because when I stumbled across that, I recall a conversation with you way back when, I thought, but that's in you, that's in you. And the little bit that I understand about it, okay, stuff that goes into your gut, probably ingested in a format that you would eat, drink, or somehow. So the smoking would not have been, again, just in my thinking, would not be the way to get that thing into you. It would be some other way. And it's fascinating to see where we are and where we're going and the biology behind it.
Yeah.
All right. Final break. When we return, maybe we can ask more about it, give us some of the highlights. If it's appropriate, what would we as a populace do? What should we be doing in terms of maybe learning more, educating ourselves? Should we be talking to our policymakers and saying, hey, look after this thing because of these potentialities, and maybe cautioning our society to watch out because you don't want to go overboard and so on? Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yes.
All right. That's going to be the concluding part of our discussion, so stay tuned for Talk Today.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
It's 2019, and you know what they say, new year, new me?
Yeah, Bobo. For me, it's new year, new car.
For real? What you thinking of buying?
The new RAV4 from Bot Motors. It's one of the safest compact SUVs out there with enough room inside, which is good for my family and convincing my wife we need this. Plus, it's fuel efficient, fun to drive, and on top of that, it's on sale too.
Yeah, and I hear it's one of the best-selling SUVs on the market.
Cause you don't gotta spend more to do more. That's why I'm gonna get mine now, while they have a new stock to select from.
Do more in your RAV4. Save thousands on the all-new 2019 RAV4. Test drive yours today and see why the RAV4 is a best-selling SUV in Cayman. Available only at Vant Motors, Walkers Road.
Hello, I'm Joseph Woods, the Acting Port Director. Our port facility is the hub of the Cayman Islands commerce and economic activity, handling $658 million in imported goods annually. From groceries to construction materials, all sectors of our economy depend on the port. But it is now 40 years old. Its infrastructure is degrading, and we feel the strain from insufficient space for both cargo and cruise operations. The time is now. A new expanded port facility is needed to allow both cargo and cruise to operate efficiently and to support our island's continued growth and development. Support the port, support our tourism, support Cayman's continued growth and development.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you so much for joining us. It is a monthly mental health matters, and I'm very grateful for this continued opportunity to speak both with Dr. Mark Lockhart, one of our resident psychiatrists, together with Mr. Denny Warren. Earlier, Dr. Alexandra Borden was here, but it's not always easy to stay for this extended period. I'm trustful that it's been beneficial. I know it has for me. It's challenged some of the thought processes and But Dr. Lockhart, from the perspective that I think people want to ensure that they're properly informed. Now, I sit at the outset, I stand by it. This is like many subjects, maybe more so. You need to read and understand what you're reading and ask questions and have dialogue and discourse, and hopefully,
And we have to discuss things that are difficult. We can't discuss just the pleasantries. There are things that are hard, that are challenging, that maybe our views are based on maybe our prejudices rather than on fact. And also we must embrace the idea of maybe changing our mind when we learn and we gain other information. One thing I wanted to touch on quickly too is that we were talking about synthetic types of cannabis, not really CBD, although there is, but there is a problem that we're also facing with the current structure of cannabis being illegal, in that there are unscrupulous companies that make synthetic cannabis, which is extremely dangerous, which is 50 to 100 times stronger than the regular cannabis that's sold. It causes severe psychotic reactions. It can last for hours and even at times over a day. And it's very destructive to young people. And we're seeing some of that here now being brought back by, young students away at school and coming back and so on. It's not detectable on the usual types of tests for cannabis. And it's ironic because it is easy to purchase. They can buy it online, they can buy it in certain stores without any problem, and this is 50 to 100 times stronger and more dangerous than the illegal cannabis.
Wow. Synthetic.
Right. Which is another reason why we say that the best way forward, and I remember years ago there was a police commissioner here that agreed with me that decriminalization is, in my opinion, the way to go. Does that mean that it's then available for everyone just to pick it up off the street? I'm not saying that. But I'm saying taking it out of the criminal element and putting it in the treatment, medical management is a lot better and safer. It can also increase treatment options that way, because we're able to then know what works and doesn't, what can be changed. And last but not least, it can open up another avenue of potential revenue for our islands.
Now, then we hear about legalizing and decriminalizing. And sometimes is that semantics? But there's a major difference.
Yes, there's not semantics at all.
Right.
When you decriminalize something, it means you take it off of there's not a criminal offense for the transgression. It doesn't mean that there isn't an offense. It's just not a criminal offense, right? In other words, for criminal offenses, you go to prison. For non-criminal offenses, you don't go to prison.
Okay.
Right?
So then, can we ask then? Sorry, Dr. Hart.
Yeah, so therefore then, the 16-year-old that gets stopped by the police and they wind the window down, they smell the smoke in the car, they find him with a certain amount. Rather than being taken to the police station and arrested, he's given a ticket, the name is taken, he's given a referral to a proper treatment facility, he's given an appointment to see we could set up whatever mechanism. We already have things in place, so we're not talking about millions of dollars. We have Caribbean Haven, we have the hospital, but they would be then sent down a different path that would really look at finding out the underlying reasons and treatment.
Okay, so a couple of things. Where are we in the Cayman context when it comes to use, possession, transgression? Is it?
It's a criminal offense.
It's a criminal offense.
Yeah, unless you're authorized.
And then the authorization is only for
by prescription.
By prescription for the oil.
Yes.
And the oil only.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. You see, what Dr. Lockhart is saying is absolutely correct, because those who look at this subject and think, well, okay, these persons are deviants and we need to punish them. In punishing them, because you're so upset and angry about and being disappointed about how they've misbehaved, you just want to just teach them a lesson. And so essentially what you're saying is we're just going to lock them up and throw away the key. What you really need to be doing is addressing what the people who may have mental or other issues that are more appropriately described as health rather than prison.
Okay. I'm going to ask a question, not expecting an answer from you, but even if you wish. It's not intended to be a rhetorical question by any means either. It's more for the public. So presently, you have to be 18 in this jurisdiction to legally consume alcohol. Some places we know it's 21 and what have you. So a person who is in this jurisdiction under the age of 18 at home or on someplace consumes an alcoholic beverage. Is that person committing an offense? And if so, can that person be arrested and in prison like the person would if the person is smoking weed, ganja, herb, whatever we call it?
I actually don't know what the offense is for drinking underage. I don't know what the penalty is, I should say.
Well, the penalty is... Yeah.
So that brings up a good point. Dr. Bodden had touched on that earlier, that this whole concept of legality and illegality does not have a real evidence-based physical and medical basis. There are medications or there are substances that are illegal that have potential medicinal benefits. And there are substances that are legal that have no medicinal benefit. And the irony of it, and this is hypocrisy. That's what I call it. It's my word. That example you gave is great. That we see a 14, 16-year-old that goes out, they're intoxicated at our, we have our street parades. We've heard of things happen with young people under the influence of alcohol. It's a bit of a slap on the wrist, a little talk about it, a whisper. The same 16-year-old that's caught smoking, though, at this street carnival is arrested.
Yeah.
That's not right. Okay. Both of these are issues that have deeper social and potential mental health and other issues that should be dealt with in a different way.
And trying to prepare, I've looked at the research and the articles, particularly that Dr. Borden has shared, to make sure that I was looking at things that have credibility to them. Because not everything you read necessarily has really any.
Right.
But being concerned of our society as it travels, our young people, of people who come here, we interact, and seeing changing legislation across the globe and not understanding where we are, what we should be doing. Maybe there should be restrictions in certain areas. Maybe there should be, less limitations in other areas. Once it's the medical benefit to the populace.
Correct. What about the nutritional?
See, I thought you were going to say economic, you see.
No, well, anywhere you go, there's going to be economics. Speaking of economics, we need to find a way to bring the cost of it down.
Yeah.
Because it's a bit high right now.
Yeah. And I don't mean to be dismissive of the nutritional aspect, but a few people under the supervision and legally, in jurisdictions of the physician, persons administer the oil, and not only the health benefits and the things that are treating, but the appetite increases. The person starts to rebound. I thought, wow, maybe way back when some of us would remember, weight on or this other thing that people take in order to eat. If you don't eat, you can die, right?
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah. All right. I certainly would, if it's possible as we go forward on a very as needed basis, have this discussion collectively, individually. But as we close it out, perhaps Dr. Lockhart, any maybe final thoughts for today's discussion you would like to leave with us, sir, and then Mr. Warren?
Yeah. So again, thank you for having me, and I thank Dr. Bodden too. This was a wonderful discussion. I think it's a start, as you said, Dwayne, and it's really just to break down certain myths and misconceptions, misunderstandings. We're not here advocating that we hand out a spliff to everybody. We're not here advocating that anyone even smokes cannabis. What we're talking about is the real evidence-based properties that this plant has, the benefits that we're seeing today that it's made in terms of having the medical cannabis law, but also identifying some of the pitfalls and some of the challenges. Like I think one of the biggest ones is what Denny said, is that the cost of it. It's approximately about 150 CI dollars for a bottle, which is about 60 milliliters, about 60 ml. So a bottle maybe about 6 inches in height. That's 150 CI. There are people that can't afford it. The irony is that opiates are a lot less expensive. So I can get a prescription of some very powerful medication that could take my life with a 2-week dose. Whereas a whole bottle of medical cannabis, if I was to drink the whole bottle, it wouldn't take my life, and it's much more expensive.
And it'll probably make it steeper. I don't know.
You get
all right. And I think as you share your thoughts today, final thoughts, the insurance companies, you alluded to it, some cover, some don't, plans, whichever. But anyway, Mr. Warren?
I'd just like to say thank you for having us to the program, and I hope that going forward the public can have a greater understanding about the various subjects, and that we could find a way forward to deal with the issues.
Well, thank you all very much, for being so candid, for being, not just professional, but presenting information. For those who are listening, drborden.com, look for the mental health matters aspect. We get information there. There are some wonderful articles to read and get informed, question, be accepting of just anything because it was said. Don't be dismissive either because of the messenger. Right. Thank you both. Enjoy your week.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
And to our listeners, let us be a very productive, engaging society. Remember, if we want to be better, we just have to try harder and to be better. Tomorrow, we'll ask you to come back for more talk today right after the midday news and midday meditation. Until then, be blessed.
Shaken yet standing firm. This is Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.